Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Liz Peterson, and this is Raise the Vibe with Liz. And today I have Lynn Balter joining me today. I met her when I was at the Cryon convention in Sedona, Arizona, and she has a new book that she published last year, Walking Through Pain with Purpose, Turning Trauma into Triumph. And I just love this title because I'm all about turning adversity into triumph. So first, a little bit about Lynn. Lynn was born and raised in the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan, began her learning lessons that would bring her closer to her true self, a journey of self-discovery at a very young age. After attending Western Michigan University and earning her Bachelor of Business Administration degree in 1982, she moved to Scottsdale, Arizona, where she began her career as a property manager, then a real estate agent, and a successful entrepreneur in the vacation rental industry. The years passed, the lessons continued, and every time bringing her closer to healing the wounds necessary to further her growth. She married her soulmate, Lynn Balter, and 1 year later, they became the parents of twins, one of whom has autism. Lynn's journey to discover her true self is a story of surviving childhood trauma, sexual assault, breast cancer, addiction, divorce, a diagnosis of autism, a crisis of traumatic brain injury, codependency, gaslighting, a concierge business and bankruptcy, and near fatal accidents, all perfectly intended for her growth, the growth that would continue to align her personality to her soul, her true self. With each lesson learned, Lynn also found peace and enlightenment through her love of spiritual teachings. Service and philanthropy have been key in healing the wounds necessary in her quest to become whole. In 1996, Lynn earned membership in the Young Entrepreneurs Organization, where she met her husband. She and Neil have helped raise millions of dollars for Autism Speaks and the Southwest Autism Research and Resource Center, both internationally recognized nonprofits. Over her lifetime, Lynn has volunteered and served for numerous nonprofit organizations. Lynn, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on to talk about your new book.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Sweet. So let's start with a little bit. I know I read your bio, but I really want to hear your personal story to where you are right now today.
Well, I feel like I have had many hurdles in my life, like all of us, and I think my book is an example of each one of us and the lessons that show up to help us grow and further align to our purpose in our lives and to have happiness. I think the whole goal for each one of us in this world is to be happy within ourselves. And it's a huge journey with all the outside interferences and all the unconsciousness that we're raised in. So I wrote my book to be raw. It's not a self-help book where a lot of people write about things they've learned and try to relay that information through information itself. I wanted to do it through real, raw experiences and literally throw myself under the bus a lot and just show exactly how many mistakes I made along the way and how many struggles that I had within myself and my own shadows in order to continue to climb those mountains. And I just really, my intention is to keep having these conversations about what it really takes to grow. And for me, it started as a teenager where I just had this real need and inclination to learn and to seek. So I was constantly reading and learning and started with a therapist when I was 14. And I got my own mother into the therapist and then the whole family into the therapist, my father into the therapist. And so I continued my journey many ways going through therapy because I did have a traumatic childhood, like many of us. So it's not unusual to many of us in the world. And so I just wanted this to be an example of how if we seek and we continue to learn the positive outcomes that can result. And I want to just have to have a continual conversation like we are on your podcast, Liz. What you do, bringing out these conversations to the world is so important because we tend to get sidetracked. And if we don't remind ourselves about how important it is to learn, we sort of get sucked into the everyday craziness that's going on around us. And for me, I have to spend a lot of time in meditation every single morning and before I go to sleep at night to continue to keep me on that course.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that, Lynn. Can you just go through some of the life lessons that you had to live through and how you kind of rose out of that using your spiritual practice to triumph over that trauma.
Yes, well, disclaimer first, I'm still rising.
As we
Continual
do.
process. So I continue to just do my best. But for me, I think my soul came into this lifetime with the intention of finally getting over being a victim and a martyr. I've had such huge walls in front of me overcoming that shadow within myself. And that shadow created a lot of other problems with people pleasing and not taking care of myself, that sort of thing. So every single lesson that showed up for me was completely intended for me when my soul came into this lifetime. I know that for sure. So looking back on it, anyone that helped me in that journey now is someone that I know I made a contract with before I came here. So I don't look at it as something that I should be anything more than grateful for to help me in that journey. So I had a mother who was raised by, she was the only child, but a mother who did a lot for her. So she kind of limited her ability to take care of others because she was so over cared for. And so she ended up having 6 children. So it was just a really difficult thing for her. And so I was the oldest out of the 6, and after with step kids that came later out of 8. And so I took on caring for my mother a lot and sort of helping her in her journey because she was quite she was in pain, she was hurting, and it was very difficult for her to take care of others. So I learned early on I had to take care of myself, and I thought it was my responsibility to take care of those around me as well. Right. So it set up the pattern that continually repeated itself. So it started there, then it would go to things like even when I was a young girl in my 20s, and I always was seeking during this time to get a degree in school and to kind of move forward. My mother divorced when I was 10. My dad had married 3 other women, so I had 3 stepmothers after that. So it was a very confusing time, and he married each woman he married unconsciously, like I do so many things unconsciously, in the same type of relationship where it was that person he needed to take care of that was kind of broken. So it was just that pattern continued, and I think the universe even gave it to me in very impactful ways. I think that it's always trying to get through to you. And when I was in my early 20s, and my book opens with this, I had a home invasion where a man, I woke up out of a dead sleep and there was a man with a knife on top of me. So he kidnapped me and took me out of my home. And so, when you read my book, you'll realize the whole story of that. But looking back at that now, I do believe that even that predator, who was probably hurting as much as I did from what he did to me in order to do acts such as that, I believe it was another way of getting my attention. Stop being a victim. You know what I mean? Stop. You know what I mean? These things are going to keep occurring in your life as you continue to live this way. So I would be a victim and a martyr. I'd do everything for everybody, people please everybody, and then poor woe is me, and then I'd be all upset and then pissy. So it was a continual cycle of me trying to learn to get out of that way of thinking. Went on to when I got, well, another example is when I got breast cancer. You could be a victim in that too, but I had to look at that in a different manner. My husband's been fighting multiple myeloma for the last 10 years and trying to get him through each transplant. We have another one coming up this month. And so it's just going through that journey of not being a victim in it, but learning from the experience of it. In my book, it also talks about my brother with traumatic brain injury that I have taken over for the last 20 years, and not being a victim of that, but understanding it's there to teach us that there's no, I now realize that it's all there meant to help me grow and become more aligned with who I am.
What lessons do you think, you say that you learned something? Could you share with us what you feel like you learned from those experiences?
I learned that I wasn't paying attention. I was still living in patterns that I had been in therapy for years to try to overcome. So I learned that I needed to go inside myself and start studying and seeking more. So you'll see throughout the whole weaving of my book how each lesson was a whisper. My intuition would tell me, there's something that you need to pay attention to here. So I would seek through those whispers, different spiritual teachers along the way. And I know many of them through my book, and they still continue to help me very much today. And I think we have such a blessing in our world today. There's so much information available today. If we don't want to learn today, it's because we don't want, it's there. If you want to go in and learn more about how to be more aligned and happy, the information's available. We just have to want to be able to go in and do that. So the lesson I learned is that it's all in here. It's not out there. And if I wanted to change any of the things that were happening in my outside world, I'd had to start here. Right. So in order to start here, it takes, like when we exercise every day, if you stop doing it, you're going to get a little flabby. So with the times I get flabby, just got flabby again, because I had a lot of transition last year. I started realizing, okay, I'm getting flabby. I'm not seeking, I'm not studying, I'm not meditating, I'm not, so when I do those things and I become more aligned with who I am inside, everything else flows better. And I take other things less personally. So for me, I can't just stop studying for a week because I'm busy, because something's going to show up. So for me, it has to be a practice that I do every day, and I enjoy doing every day. I love learning and seeking. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast and I wrote my book, is because I just want to share how great it is to learn how you can really have happiness here on earth. You don't have to wait till you die, you know what I mean? But you got to work it.
Yes, we do, don't we? I want to circle back to your assault for our listeners who have experienced assault and are working at overcoming, that adversity, that trauma. Could you walk through what your path was and how you were able to find peace with that and overcome that?
Yes. So after my assault, obviously I was in shock for some time after. I was 25 when it occurred. And I found, after I got through the initial shock of it, that I needed to reach out and help others going through the same journey, because it literally soothed me. Because when it first happened to me, all I wanted to do was talk to people who had been through it. I didn't think anyone else would understand unless they had been raped and beaten and kidnapped. You know what I mean? I just thought, and woken up in your own home. You know what I mean? So I was just, at first I was like, no one's going to get what I'm going through. And so in my job at the time was in property management, where I was constantly showing units, to people, men alone. I mean, I was terrified to even go back to work. And the man who assaulted me had been stalking me for months, so he knew all about me. And he had also stole the master keys to the community that I was working at the time. I mean, it was just I was terrified. So I learned, and I went to this place called the Center of Sexual Assault. And it was an amazing place in Phoenix. And the lady who founded the organization just passed away recently, just a beautiful, beautiful lady. But I used to go there and seek counseling and go through groups of women that had gone through the same thing, which really helped heal me. The organization also had a hotline for those people that were afraid, that were going through even predators within their own family. And young girls would call the hotlines. And so I got involved after I had healed more in being on the hotline and working with all the people that would call in. Sometimes they were men as well. And then I also worked with meeting victims at the hospital after they'd been assaulted, to sort of help them through the rape kit and that sort of thing. And then I started doing public speaking, where I would go and talk to groups about safety and different ways of being aware of what's around you. I would do news segments, as well. So that helped me, because I kind of immersed myself into, wow, there's a lot of people suffering through this. This happens to people all the time. And so it sort of made something that was really yucky, something really, really special between a lot of people that we were able to share together and get through together.
Thank you for sharing that, Lynn. I think that would be really helpful for our listeners who are, possibly going through that themselves or looking for extra avenues. And I like how you pointed out how helping those who have also had the experience helped you. I find that as well, in my life, doing something, volunteering, helping those who have gone through the same thing as me. Plus there's, this inner sense of, you're not alone. You're not alone in the process. You're not alone in your experience. There are other people who have experienced this. And there's a a meeting of kind of wounds, so to speak, when that happened.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
In the beginning of my book, I highlight, like, I think there's like 15 different people who I admire greatly that have taken terrible tragedy and turned it into triumph. Because to me, anytime you have a big tragedy, reaching out and helping within that particular arena, whether it's autism or traumatic brain injury or whatever it is, losing a child, I mean, going in and serving and helping others going through the same thing, it kind of helps to heal it a bit, a lot.
Mhm.
And I just use those examples of those wonderful people and what they've accomplished through their tragedy.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Lynn. I also want to dip kind of into your breast cancer experience too, because I know of a few people in my own life who are experiencing, this, and friends in my outer circle. And what would you share with our listeners about that experience? And was there something that you did different from your sexual assault experience that you did for your breast cancer experience, or was it, more of the same? Did you find yourself volunteering, finding ways where you could connect? Did you seek out your spiritual practice? How did you go about, managing your feelings and emotions around that process in life?
The most terrifying part about cancer, and my husband, the same thing, is the initial diagnosis. It's the hardest part, whether it's being diagnosed with cancer, autism, whatever it is. And I don't know, it's always been this way, and I believe I surely am an empath, but people have always come to me to help them get through tragedies. I don't know, it's just one of those things that it's just sort of unfolded for me. So it naturally, when I got breast cancer, many people came to help me. Many people, tried to be there during my medical treatments, through my days recovering at home, encouraging phone calls, tons of gifts. I mean, there were so many emails and so many cards and so many flowers, and just felt so loved. So, and of course it was traumatic, but I'll tell you, I was one of the lucky ones with breast cancer, because I had a double mastectomy and it was 6 months of yuck. And I told myself, I'm going to get through this 6 months of yuck and it's going to be okay. And so I didn't have to have radiation or chemo. They said it was an aggressive cancer, so they recommended taking up both breasts. And I didn't have to go through all the other stages that so many other people have to suffer through.
Mhm.
I wasn't in my 30s. I was in my 40s. I was probably 45 at the time. So I felt blessed that it wasn't like I was married and I was, you know what I mean? So I felt like I didn't have to go through, my body changing so much, and dating and all that kind of stuff. So I was grateful for that. And I just really focused on the fact of how much love I received. It just filled my heart. So, and since my breast cancer, so many people call me when they're newly diagnosed, and what direction to go in. And I find myself to be a connector quite often, because people call me about when they're newly diagnosed with autism all the time. And I work with newly diagnosed families. I work with people that get breast cancer, people that are dealing with traumatic brain injury. And so it's just it always makes it feel more positive that you can reach out and help each other by connecting each other to the other resources that you think can help them. Because I'm certainly not an expert in any one of them, but I've just been blessed to be able to do that.
Awesome. And I really do think the greatest resource for anyone is the person who's just experienced it themselves.
Exactly. I agree.
I also want to touch a little bit in your bio. You talk about all the volunteering that you've done after your son's diagnosis with autism, your child's diagnosis with autism. Let's talk about that a little bit and what that path has been like for our listeners.
Well, now it's like it's looking back. It was so difficult in the beginning, and it's turned into a lot of beauty. Like our world is filled with so many friends that we've met along the way that have gone through having a child diagnosed with autism. And initially, it was obviously a traumatic experience. now I look at my son and he's perfect exactly the way he is. He's 21 years old and he has a twin sister who's 21 and she's typical. And my son now is just starting ASU. And so at Arizona State University. So I'm very proud of him. But when you first go through it, he was 3. And I talk about this a lot in my book. It's a very overwhelming step into a whole learning curve about autism, a whole learning curve about understanding that you thought you were, there's a poem about you think you're going to go to Italy and they get on the plane, they say, oh, we have to go to Sweden instead. We can't get to Italy on this trip. And you just, and Sweden's pretty too, but you've got to go through that journey of knowing that you're not going to go where you thought you were going to go. And all of the people along the way that literally their whole lives flip upside down and everything stops because there's so much to do, so many therapists to get. My son had 60 hours of therapy a week his whole life. And so it's just managing all those people and managing how to get to all those different offices. And so you become so immersed in it. And so when I work with newly diagnosed families, which we do quite often, we do 5 or 6 a month at least, and they're from anywhere from newly diagnosed with children up until people going through really hard times with teenagers that have autism, that whole thing. They need, you can't just overwhelm them and tell them everything that's in their ahead of them. So you take them step by step to get through, acceptance takes a while, right? And so for me, I thought it would really help heal me if we got really involved with Autism Speaks and SARC, which we're still quite involved with SARC today. Autism Speaks has branched off a little more nationally. And we started the Walk for Autism here in Arizona. So the people that within the autism community are like our family now. So we all help each other along the way. And it just gives you such a sense of how far we've come and how much we've accomplished when you see all these families having so many resources available. And I know our families helped, with that. My husband's been really involved with changing the laws and insurance. We were lobbying in Washington. We were, just really, really, really trying to make it so there was so much support as a nation, for these families and these children. And now there's tons of support in place for adults and teenagers. One of my heroes in life is Denise Resnick, Phoenix is the leading city in the world for autism. And we're really close to her and her whole community. And I just feel blessed to kind of follow footsteps of people like that. I want to be around people like that. And there's so many people within that community that just care so much and they want to help. And it just doesn't make it even seem like a hardship anymore in some ways, not in all ways. Just to be bonded together. It takes a village to raise a child with autism, and we're all a village and we all really support one another and it feels good.
Oh, I love that. And I love how you pointed out that it takes a village, that you all support each other. I think that's really important to have that network around. And thank you for all the work that you've done, for the cause and for your son.
Well, we just now started with, there's a organization in Mexico, because my husband and I just moved to Mexico in the winters in Puerto Vallarta. And there's a new organization. It's not new, but it's a beautiful building for autism in Mexico. So now Phoenix is going to help support training them on different therapies in autism in the Mexico office. So it just keeps on rolling into more and more positive directions.
That's fantastic. And I'm hearing a theme too, that part of your life's purpose is looped into your trauma and your adversity.
Yes, because it all showed up for a reason.
Yes. How has each lesson brought you, because you talk about in your book, your unconscious patterns that guided your life. So let's talk a little bit about how everything that you experienced, all those lessons brought you closer to letting go of those unconscious patterns that you functioned out of.
Well, that was more study and seeking. So I love following a lot of the work Bruce Lipton does, Joe Dispenza does, Greg Braden, like all that unconsciousness and the science I love how we're really, really, really making it happen now. We're tying science and spirituality more together, where more people who look just at the scientific way of looking things are opening up their hearts to looking at this information. And it's real. And they've proven that 95% of our thinking is unconscious, right? And so a lot of people say, if you look at the 7-year-old man, you see this, you see the 7-year-old boy, you see the 70-year-old man. And I think that's true. But as Joe Dispenza, has shown through all of his research, and it's all, it's real, that a 35-year-old person, you're in it, man. You're 98% probably unconscious. So so the only way to tap into that is to seek. I mean, it doesn't just happen because you want it to. It's just like when you want to get muscles working out, you have to freaking work at it. And so I I find my meditation really helps tap into that unconsciousness. And as I continue to really work towards that, I literally, I'm more of an observer of how I'm behaving. So I still behave badly, don't get me wrong. I still react badly. I think I'm now recognizing when I do it and observing it more, and then taking, I hope, more responsibility for it than I did before, because it was literally um like a fog I was in for so many years of my life before I really, and I was studying these teachers forever, many of them, but I really wasn't, I was intellectually, like, literally learning it, and it all made sense because it was truth, but I wasn't really processing it, right? So it's a continual learning curve to try to find that peace and that happiness within us, because I think that's the whole goal every single soul on this planet has, is we all just want to be happy and peaceful and calm, and accept, not, what do they say, what we resist persists, to just accept those whispers when they're coming, listen to them, and know there's a reason that particular lesson is underway, and to kind of keep seeking through the lecture, the lesson, to come out on the other side as aligned as we can be.
What do you think that pivotal piece of information was for you that took you from like learning it to having that aha moment where you all of a sudden started having awareness?
Oh God, it's not just a one-time thing. It's been a few different times where I'm like, okay, I got to really do it this time. I think, one of the things for me, I believe that my husband has been a huge spiritual teacher for me. And so I believe that when we meet our partners, that there's a magnetism that just brings us to that person. Like, it just pulls us so hard that we can barely resist it. And we've had so many lessons to teach each other, right? He has been my hero, because I'm telling you, a lot of men would have never, ever wanted their wife to publish the book I published, because, as I said, it's quite raw. And, I come from my own separate reality. I make that very clear in my book. We all come from our own lens, and we all see the world through our own lens, right? And so I make it clear this is just my lens. But we have grown so much as a result of me writing this book, of going through our different lessons that we've had together. So I think he was a real, he helped me a lot to sort of look at the behaviors that I had recreated from my childhood, right? And so he's also my biggest trigger, right? And so he's meant to be. So a lot of the time I would go back into that old pattern that we would engage in. And so each time I start recognizing it happen, I just know, you got to study more, you got to meditate more, you got to have more time to feed yourself. Um, I think I got off course from your question, but did I answer that?
Yes, you're doing great.
But I continue to, it keeps showing up over and over. So I don't think I'm done. I do think that we can spend a lot of time just trying to clear ourselves over and over and over in our life. I just want to get to a point, I just want to be happy. I don't want to keep having to go in and clear myself of this drama and clear myself of that drama. And I don't, and I love my book. A lot of people say it's like a really good movie, and I've got great group reviews, and I really do think it's a great story. It's my story, but I don't want to live in the old story. You know what I mean? I want to be in this new story where I'm having a conversation with you, and we're talking about how more and more people can be happy, and we can spread that, of how you can do it, and it's really real, and it can happen. And if you fall, it's okay, but you just get back up and you keep trying.
Nice. I like that. You also talk about how writing this book, how being so raw in your story has made you more conscious through your writing.
Yes, it has. So, and I think with my, I think that the only way to get more conscious is to go into, they call it different things where whether you want to call it quantum physics, or you want to call it the vortex, or you want to call it God, you want to call it, it's there and it's real and it's 99% what we can't see. And that's also proven too, as we all know, Liz, right? So literally concentrating on getting inside that 99%. There's a lot of beauty up in that, right? And so I just love the journey of trying to get stronger in my spiritual path. And when things are showing up for me, it's usually because I'm supposed to be practicing it. You know what I mean? If something's happening with a relationship I have, that's practice. And I can't look at it as a negative thing. That's trying to help me, continue to be more aligned.
Oh, I like that, how you pointed out as practice. So you don't see it as, oh, I have to go through this thing and here I am
Sometimes,
enduring this.
sometimes.
It's like, okay, here it is, I'm in it again. What is the lesson in this?
Exactly. Sometimes I react to it, but the difference is I'm hoping I'm reacting for not as long. You know what I mean? Because you're going to react, right? It's just knowing that we can like shake it off more when we kind of observe how we're managing it. And I don't think, and Joe Dispenza, and I love talking about other people's work because they're really great teachers, and there's so many of them out there. We can all just go on YouTube like your show, and we can learn so much, and they're all everywhere. You just have to just hit the button, right? And it's free. And so, but if we don't change old patterns, that piece isn't going to come. And changing old patterns is hard work. And it just automatically, man, that 98% of us, it's there. It's like, and Joe Dispenza says all the time, it's like taming a wild animal. You know what I mean? To get that body to work with the mind, right? And to do what you want to do, but unconsciously, it's really hard to check yourself in. That's why I have to do it every day.
Yeah, it really is a practice. It's like, oh, okay, there it is. Here's the practice. How am I going to function differently? What am I going to do differently? What am I going to say differently? Yeah, am
Yep,
I going
exactly.
to relive that old pattern again, or am I going to choose to do it differently? Yeah.
You know what I do too a lot? I'm not a big social media person, but when I do go on Instagram or whatever, I'll look at my teachers and they'll have quotes all the time and it just realigns me. Or let's say I'm getting ready in the morning or cooking, I'll put on, YouTube where it kind of reminds me and just fills me up. I never watch the news. Every now and then I'll get the headlines somewhere or another, but I love just filling myself up with staying aligned with that. And when I'm not, the right thing will show up every time to kind of bring me back.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. I love that you shared that, because that's one of my favorite practices too. Is like, okay, what can I listen to today that's going to get me aligned, get me grounded, kind of get me in a flow. And it's always that perfect thing that ends up coming to you for the day. At least that's how it works for me.
It is. It's wonderful, actually. And I feel like through the course of my life, that every single time, every lesson that the readers will read in my book is that every single time the something shows up. You know what I mean? To help me to get through and come on the other side of it every time. So I just feel like I'm very grateful that I have these wonderful guides out there sort of carrying me through. And it feels, if you ask for them to be there, they just are. That's what I find.
Yes. What are some of your favorite practices?
I do my meditations every morning. So sometimes I usually do guided now. I found it really, and I just blogged about this recently. I find Joe Dispenza's, he kind of like hypnotizes you into it. So you go out of that third dimension so fast, at least for me. I love doing Wayne Dyer's meditations, Abraham Hicks. I love doing my own. I do a lot of hiking. So that's my walking meditations. And then at night before I go to sleep, always do like a 5-minute affirmation of some kind. It's always different depending on where my head is at the time. Lately, I've been doing a lot of, Wayne Dyer has that 5-minute, just a reminder of, how we, sometimes where a day happens, she did this to me, he did that to me. You don't want to go to sleep being in your unconscious mind. You sort of want to be open to the fact that it's all happening on purpose. There's nothing that's happening that isn't supposed to be happening. There's nothing that's happening that we can't handle. And trust that. And just going to sleep and tapping into your unconsciousness in that manner, it works, because it really starts to like help you just untangle all the webs of habits that we just that are no longer serving us.
Mhm.
And then, like I said, I love learning. So I'm constantly reading or seeking in some manner or second. And my practice is also helping those that whoever shows up and needs guidance to be there for them. But I'm now learning the difference between, and I talk about this in my book, of being of service and being a servant, right? So the old patterns I had of being the servant and the people pleaser, it's not that I want to be unkind ever to someone who's at a lower vibration, but I want to be at a higher vibration myself and how I handle, being there for them. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Like I don't want to discount that we're all at a different place at different times, so there's no judgment there, but it's also not filling myself up with things that aren't going to serve me or even help them. So I'm starting to learn the difference more in that respect. And I do that, and I help doing that through my study.
That's great awareness that you found like the difference between that, because I think that that's not something that's talked about very much, being of service and being a servant.
And when you're enabling someone, that you're only hurting them. You know what I mean? So it's like having that awareness of knowing the balance of each of them, right? It can be tough, but I think I'm getting better at it. I'm trying.
Thanks for sharing that. You've also, as a result of your study and meditation, gone through an awakening. You want to talk about that a little bit?
I think it happened to me in February. So I launched my book. We had a huge launch party. It was wonderful. And my husband and I decided we were going to move to Mexico right after that. So we had to pack up our house of 22 years. We turned it into a vacation rental. And we also have a home up in we live in Scottsdale, and we have a home in northern Arizona, which I'm at right now. So we live in the mountains here. So we decided we wanted to live on the ocean, and Mexico was a lot more feasible to do that, especially financially. So we were going through moving the houses. My stepfather passed away during that time, and I had to put my mother with my sisters, and I had to put her into a beautiful facility. She's got dementia. So there was a lot of things going on. So I wasn't doing my meditations. I wasn't taking time for me. I was packing box after box after box and moving my parents out of their house, moving me out of my house, setting up our new home in Mexico. So it got me off track, right? Because I was on the calendar instead of in here, right? And so I just was off course. I was reading material that was feeding my anger. I was watching the news. I was you know reacting poorly. I was just in my unconsciousness, right? So I finally just stopped and started getting into my work and studying again. And I really woke up into knowing, instead of just knowing it, to knowing how to do it. You know what I mean? I just feel like I'm just feeling like this ease that I wasn't feeling before, right? And I don't think I'll ever let myself get to 6-8 months of just being in the fog again. It doesn't feel, I just want to be happy. And I think our creating our happiness is more than packing up any house or any box or any circumstance that we have to address. I had some, I try to manage things with my brother, with my son, with my husband's health, but you know what I mean? And you get so tangled in, we all do, we all have our list, right? And you can get so tangled into the process of each individual, which seems like a hurdle, instead of just stepping back and feeding yourself first. It's like putting the mask on yourself first in the airplane and then your child. It's easy to forget. So I think I awakened again. I think I'm going to continue to keep awakening at different times.
Right? I think it's a process, right? As you say,
Yes.
awakening at different times, because there's different stages in life where we kind of get a new perspective also.
Yes.
Yeah, and awaken to different things in different ways and seeing things in different
Exactly.
ways. Yeah, I agree.
Exactly.
One of the things that you also talk about is creating heaven on earth for yourself. So can you talk a
Mhm.
little bit about how you feel you've done that for yourself and how our listeners could maybe do that for themselves?
Yes. So for me, I believe as we get more aligned within ourselves, and we are just feeling so good, that the what we want to do is we just want to be of service. You know what I mean? It's like we just want to be of service to ourselves and to others. And so I think I've lived my life a lot in service, but I think that now the service I want to do is I want to talk about this. I think our world has got a lot of uh, pain in it right now. And I think we're going to get over the hurdle. I really do. But I think it's going to get messy in the process. And I think those of us that are doing this work, we got to keep doing it. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't have any need to, like I said, be a coach, but I love having these conversations as overall for all of us, and talking to different groups about how we all feel the same. We all know something's off right now, so we just need to create more light and not, take any let everybody go through it in their own process. But the more of us that sort of awaken and align, it's going to show up in our behavior, right? And so my quest is to continue to really walk my walk, right? Like, those people that you meet, like, they're just so calm all the time and so relaxed, and just, we all have met those people and we're like, how do they freaking do that? And so, but because they're able to do that, we pay attention to those people, right? So I just want to get further ahead with becoming more and more one of those people. You know what I mean? And sort of, and if more of us do it, I think we're going to have a more peaceful earth, so I think it's a really great, you know intention for all of us who are kind of doing this kind of stuff.
It is. What does your heaven on earth look like?
um Me having my behavior align um with uh my soul, my personality. Like Gary Zukov used to say, he used to say, your personality aligning with your soul, right? Um, being, I want to get to a place where when I'm meditating and everything's so calm and everything's so perfect, where it's like that when I'm awake, all day, right? And slipping, yes, but generally feeling really good like that. Like, don't you just not want to come out of meditation sometimes? It's just so amazing. You're like, okay, now it's time to face the life and do the work and walk the walk.
Right. Do you ever find yourself stuck in what you call prison of thoughts and unconscious thinking? And what do you do to pull yourself out of that?
I do that all the time. So for me, it's like I said, doing that 5-minute affirmation before I go to sleep, however you want to do it, with how, if it's through another, person or a teacher, or whether it's yourself, literally, right, having your own thoughts that you say to yourself in a prayer every night, whatever it is. I just think it's so, I just lost my train of thought.
That's
You were
okay.
saying, the one I have the unconscious thought. So I let myself have them, okay? And then because I don't fight it, I let myself have it. But then I just try to remind myself through those 5-minute interval things I do, or my meditations, that it all will be okay. There's nothing we can't face. And most of the time where I have those thoughts going on, it's because I want approval from someone, or I want to please someone, or I'm so, like, so many of us in this realm are empaths, where we take on everybody's stuff. And so I'm trying to, I remind myself that's not your stuff. You're just going to let them have their journey. You're going to, be in love through it, but separate myself from that journey that they're going through. Because most of my self-talk is really just old patterns that I still do unconsciously, of trying to be good enough. But and we all have our triggers, I think. So every person's different. My trigger is if I don't feel safe, there's going to be a reaction, right? So if I don't feel safe, that old panic starts to come back, and those old thoughts come back, and the old behaviors come back. Some people it's to be good enough. Some people it's to whatever it is. But that's mine. So every single time I try to tell myself, are you not feeling safe? Right? Why are you not feeling safe? Just to kind of honor, because your feelings are telling you something. They're always right. Right? So just honor that you have them.
Nice. I like that. I was really feeling into that myself. Talk about, give us a few tips and tools here as we're coming to an end of our conversation. What can our listeners do? What can they learn from you that you practice that might help them in their lives?
Well, I think everybody's busy in this world. So we're all on a spinning, freaking mouse wheel trying to get everything we need to accomplish each day. So I think taking time every single morning when we get up to just take that half hour, if you even have to get up a little earlier, just to get yourself set on the right track for that day. And then during that day, when you do have time, if you're in the car, put on a great teacher that you resonate to. Get an audiobook, listen to it in your car. Listen to YouTube if you're off. Look at your Instagram if there's certain followers you think that are really teaching you something good. Read books like mine that are raw, because I literally think that we're all trying to just have a certain portrayal or image. We all have shadows. We all screw up. You know what I mean? So I think that it's okay to say we screw up. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And so I think giving each other permission to mess up and to just get back up and try harder. But for me, it's constantly seeking. Like, people want to work out every day to look good. Well, your mind just needs as much of a workout as your body.
So true. How can people find your book, find your blog? Tell us a little bit about all the stuff that you have going on right now.
Okay, so my book you can get on Amazon, many other different links. So if you go to my website, lynnbalter.com, it'll give you all the different ways to get my book. I have blogs that I post on my website as well. I'm just starting in this arena. So this is my first podcast. So I'm very excited. So I'm so grateful you had me, Liz. It means the world to me. And I do conferences a lot. I love being around spiritually aligned, spiritual people in the same realm and the same learning curve and seeking. So I do a lot of conferences and sell my books. I'm hoping to do a little more speaking as well as podcasts. So that's just my journey, just like having the conversation. That's my intention. Just however well we all can have the conversation.
Fantastic. I hope you can manifest that in your life.
Me too.
Yeah, it's a beautiful dream. And let's see, my final question of the hour. What is a jewel of wisdom that you would like to share with our audience before we go?
Make being happy inside your biggest priority. Putting your alignment and your calm and your gratitude for this beautiful little illusion of life we have here, and recognizing how great, how much fun the journey is, your priority.
Awesome. Thank you, Lynn. It's been a pleasure to host you. I'm so glad you were able to join me. I'm so glad we met at the conference. And I'm super excited that your book is out there. And I'm really happy that I'm able to promote you and be your first podcast and get your voice out there. Because I really do think it's important work to teach people, through our own experience, how to turn trauma into triumph. So thank you so much for joining me, Lynn.
Thank you, Liz. I really appreciate it.
And thank you, everyone. Again, I'm Liz Peterson, and this is Raise the Vibe with Liz. And you can find Lynn's book on Amazon. And don't forget, her website is lynnbalter.com. And her book is Walking Through Pain with Purpose. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at Raise the Vibe with Liz. And my new website, if you'd like to work with me, is raisethevibewithliz.com. Thanks, everybody. And remember to get out there and raise the vibe. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.